Hello, this is Barbarafield, licensed marriage and family therapist in Sacramento, California. And welcome to my page, The Journey of Grief, Becoming Us Without Them. I started this channel so that there would be a place for people grieving all kinds of losses to find solidarity and hear from people like themselves and know that their grief is perfectly perfect, exactly the way it is. If you got to grieve, everybody does it differently. And so I've invited Mike and Anthony to talk to us today about holiday grief. So how about if you introduce yourself and let us know who it is that you're grieving? And let's start with Mike.
My name's Mike Wood. I'm 39, live in California. I lost my dad a year and a half ago. Me and my wife went down to get married in Southern California, and we were at the beach, and he got injured and drowned in front of me. Died while I was trying to save him, pulled him out of the water, and they were unable to resuscitate him. So that's my reason for being here.
That's hard. Okay, Anthony, how about you?
My name is Anthony Sparzo. I live in Portugal. Um, California will always be home. I'm back out here working with a company right now, California Recovery Center. I guess I echo with Mike. Mike, I'm truly sorry for your loss. Um, just before we went on, I was thinking about my father. My father passed. Next month will be 2 years since he went, and my mom passed about 9 months before him. And as Mike was talking right now, my last moments with my father, I was here's his caretaker, and just before we went on right now, I just went back to the last time when I left him, went back in to check on him 20 minutes later, and he had passed. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of both my parents that I am grieving. Still, I didn't get a chance to grieve my mom because I was still taking care of my father. And he was the one with the diagnosis, and she ended up passing before him. And we, as a family, we didn't really have a chance. We were just, consumed with taking care of him. And when he passed, the grief kind of doubled up with my mom. So, going through it still, it's I don't think I don't think it's as traumatic as what Mike just described, but like you said, grief is grief. Um, Try to normalize it and validate it, and go through the process. So
Yeah, and I
It's
think
so hard.
watching somebody suffer is a different kind of grief and tragedy, right? So I think it's just as painful. They're just different. Mine was a
agreed.
bad event that was
Right.
traumatic, but it was quick, and I think they're both they're both bad, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Yeah.
Okay, so first let me apologize for yawning. I'm in a different time zone and my body doesn't know when it's supposed to be awake and asleep. So um my husband died almost 10 years ago of a heart attack. It was his fourth heart attack, but after the third one and the four-way bypass, they said, "Oh, you'll never have another heart attack again." 6 years later, he died of a heart attack. And so the holidays are sneak up on me. All of the dates are between November 5th and February 13th. And I'm kind of on a little flaky roller coaster most of the time in between there. So I asked you to think about a topic that you felt was important for us to related to the holidays and how the holidays impact your grief process. So, Anthony, how about if you go first this time? And what would you like us to talk about related to holidays and grief?
I think really for me, it comes down to almost commemorating them, and really showing up for, I really try to, the family support would be what I would talk about, what I would really, and then general support, friends, family, trying to validate, that, what we're going through is normal. I don't know that, we can look at, like being happy, instead of just, surviving it, surviving this time. When you talk about the time period, you're so right. My mom's favorite holiday was Thanksgiving. My parents' wedding anniversary is Christmas Eve. Then there's Christmas. And my father passed on January 10th. My mom's birthday is January 15th. So just like, and I didn't really put that together until you said what you said. And I'm like, geez, there's that 2.5 month period, and all of these, dates come up very quickly, and then of course you go through it, 6 months later with Mother's Day, Father's Day. My dad's birthday is right near Father's Day. And so I think it really, for me, the central is to be able to share it with my family, rather than shutting down, and as an ex-addict, I was good at shutting down grief throughout my whole life. I didn't have any education other than use and not feel. And then, just compound the shame, and eventually it comes back to get you anyhow. So being sober today, I'm able to, I guess, grieve, sometimes it's surface, sometimes it's very, deep, sometimes I shut off. I'm married to a licensed marriage family therapist, so she's really good at not letting me shut it off, although she respects the boundaries of it. She genuinely wants to share in, the process with me, which sometimes is great. Sometimes I just want to be left alone in my feelings, but knowing she's right there next to me allows me to feel safe. So, for me, if I'm talking about a topic, it would be dealing with grief in the holidays and the support of family that allows the process to unfold to where it's manageable, I suppose, without the pressure of I have to be okay, in order for, because there is that pressure, like, let's not bring the rest of the party down, we're, it's Christmas, we got to celebrate, and it's like, well, this is
Yeah,
true,
people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, I mean, not everybody's going to be in that same place, nor should they have to, so.
Absolutely. So, how about you, Mike? Do you want to talk about that idea of the social support to
So after my dad died the tragic way that he did, there was money involved in a business, and it really has destroyed my relationship with my brothers and sisters and my mom, who was there. Half the family was there that day and half weren't. So that part's a little bit, I don't know, it's tricky for me because I'm still angry at them for pushing. Basically, what happened is I got kind of pushed out of the business. It turned into a money thing, right? And that I never thought that that would happen to my family ever. I'm extremely close to my brothers and sisters and my mom. Like that's who we don't even have friends. That's who we hang out with. So to be the one to watch my dad die and then me be the one to pull him out of the water and rescue him, and then not be able to have my wedding, right? And then come home and be we're still trying to figure out really why, but I guess money kind of pushed away from the family has been difficult. Now we have had some healing. One of my sisters called and said, "Hey, we kind of steamrolled you. We were worried about the business and the money, and so I was able to, kind of heal a little bit with her. But me and my mom's relationship is still pretty strained. Um, so I'm familiar with that. I guess I'm just kind of on the other side of it of, well, we're still trying to heal. But I guess for me, I'm just saying I'm still angry. I'm angry. I think in a sense that, like I've told you, Barbara, it's almost like he left me and my dad were really, really close. So some days I get to the point where I'm like, I'm just mad he left me here alone. Not alone, but you know what I mean. Um, that he left before me, or I'm here by myself now, and then my biggest supporter is gone, and then my family kind of turns on me was has been difficult. Um, but there has been some healing.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad that is happening and it's
So,
continuing to improve, it sounds like.
mhm.
Yeah, I think the social support is critical. I'm glad I have lots of friends and family around on the holidays. My son and his wife, her family has sort of adopted me. So they make sure I have something to do for Thanksgiving and Christmas and Christmas Eve. So now I feel sort of like an aunt in their family instead of in the beginning, I felt like the fifth leg, right?
Mhm.
And hanging out with friends, making sure that there's nothing more dangerous than one of us alone in a room. So yeah, I'm very, very grateful for the amount of social support I receive. And so, Mike, what is a topic that you would like us to discuss related to holidays and grief?
I don't know if it relates necessarily to holidays, but a little bit, but I think being able to share the losses and the wins with my dad was a big one. I could always call him, "Hey, how do I do this?" or "What tool do I use?" We worked together, right? So I would talk to him 100 times a day. Um, when I got my new job a year ago, he would have been so pumped. I can't just pick up the phone and say, "Hey," or "Today I had a really bad day." You know, well, let's go hang out or let's go do something. That's been, I guess, especially around the holidays, that has been a little bit more difficult for me to deal with, just because that was kind of my rock. And I think now I have to be the rock for my family, right? It's almost like a passing of the torch, which is fine as long as it's done in a healthy way.
Mm,
Yeah.
very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how about you, Anthony? What was a crucial role that your mom or your dad um filled in your life that has a gaping hole in it now?
Well, kind of following what Mike said is one, I mean, I had a I had a very strained relationship with my father for too many years of my life. We did have love and closure at the end. The one thing that me and my father had in common was he raised me to be an incredible, deeply diehard Yankee fan, New York Yankees. And we had that in common. If we didn't talk for a year, we talked during the playoffs. Um, everything, he was such a diehard, and we shared that from the time I was 9 years old until, I mean, weeks before he passed, we were still, talking about the Yankees. And it was uh, 2 months after he passed away, I went to Yankee Stadium for opening day. I had wanted to take him there for years, and no, don't want to do this. So I did. And it was always known that I was going to take his ashes. And I went to opening day with my dad. And after the game, I walked across the street to where old Yankee Stadium was, and I scattered his ashes in the old grounds of the original Yankee Stadium, where as a kid he had been on that field, chasing Mickey Mantle after they won the World Series. I mean, so um, it's still there. That come free agency time, and who did we sign, and opening day, and throughout the whole, you know, we fought, about different players, and we argued about the management style and the ownership and everything, but it always kept us connected. And I'll never experience that. Now, I have that with my son to a point, but um, nothing will ever be the same in regards to that again.
Mhm.
That's it's something that me and him only shared. It's even something like my sister's, like, when the Yankees made the World Series a couple years ago, she called me, before game one, and she said, how are you doing? And I said, I'm pissed. I was angry because he had waited all these years, and, you know, 8 months or 9 months after he passes away, the Yankees are back in the World Series, and he didn't get to see it, and I was really angry, during that, much more angry that he wasn't there than the Yankees actually losing the World Series, which really was painful. But just that my dad wasn't there to see it, and I'll never have that, experience again of getting on the phone and talking about the game with him. And I think that that's true for a lot of sons and fathers, that are sports fanatics like we are. And I just try to carry it on with my boy, and he's just it's just not the same. It was something special, and it'll always be. But there's an opening there that may never close. I think that's probably very accurate. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
I'm a
let's
big
talk a
49ers,
little bit. Oh, go ahead.
saying I'm a big 49ers fan, so we're big sports people over here too. But
I'm a
I can
Niners
re
guy.
nice. I can relate a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah, so my dad that passed was my stepdad, which was he basically took over the father role when I was young, and I don't get along with I don't speak to my real dad, so I can understand some of that on off that you're talking about, not having a great relationship. And
sure.
I also am recovering. I I wouldn't say I used drugs. That wasn't necessarily my thing was alcohol, and I've been clean 7 years. So I we have that in common, I guess, too. I'm a recovering
Right
alcoholic.
on, Mike.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's great, bud.
Yeah.
Right
So
on.
let's talk about, you kind of touched on some how those traditions or those regular old rituals can be so hard at Christmas time, but also how we can start new traditions. So my husband and I used to go and serve at the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center on Thanksgiving and Christmas morning, because our boys were big and they were with their girls, and so it was just the two of us. So we would go do that, and then we would come home and like get pizza or hang out and watch movies. So I've been very lucky that my family has made a point of not letting me drop into a black hole on those days. So the first year, my brother and his wife planned a trip to San Diego, and we got home on New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve. So they spent the night and did Christmas with me. And then my son and daughter-in-law and her family make sure I have stuff to do. But there's a lot of, downtime that he would have filled. And then he was the one who did all the Christmas decorating. And so for the first couple of years, I just couldn't even begin to face it. The third year, I lit up my front yard. You could see it from a satellite. Put up every string of lights, every light bulb, everything. And I've been doing it ever since. And in October, I had a surprise gallbladder surgery and was just too whipped. So I told my youngest son, I just don't think I'm going to be able to pull it together to go on this vacation and get my Christmas lights up. So last week he came and strung all my Christmas lights for me. So that the ways that people help you maintain old traditions, but they also help you maintain new traditions. So talk about traditions, Anthony.
Um, well, one of the traditions in our family was Christmas Day was lasagna, um, and The Godfather, the entire trilogy. So my wife maintains that. She cannot do lasagna, but she sits down and we watch the Godfather trilogy. It's little things like that. My mom's sausage stuffing was really something that my wife is now taken over. I think as far as traditions go, I think it comes down to love and being with those that you enjoy their company and you're loved by them and protected by them and you feel secure. It's my wife now. My wife is my rock. We decorate early. We get everything out, and I love to decorate. I love Christmas. I love the magic of the spirit of it. And just being out at the malls, not necessarily to go crazy, Black Friday shopping, just to be out there. And I think one of the really cool things is that I took a few pieces of some of my mom's favorite Christmas decorations. So my mom and dad are right there in our house, and they're there in the pieces that they owned. My mom was big on Christmas, so the house was beautifully decorated every year. And all the grandkids have a little bit of their Christmas, decorations. And I took a couple of pieces that were very important to me. So I get to have my mom and dad there with me. So that tradition will carry on, the stuff that they had bought will be around in different homes for many, many years to come. And my youngest daughter, she really is, echoes Christmas like my mom did and like I did, and she carries it on very well. She's very proud of having all of her grandmother's stuff. So, my mom is gone, but the traditions that she created, decades ago, will be around for decades to come. So,
And Mike, traditions, old, new, lost, found.
I would say we are a pretty traditional family when it comes to Christmas. Uh, they always decorated heavily. My mom, especially. My dad always hung lights. Um, lots of good food. Always playing Christmas music like 2 months early. Show up at the house and they got Christmas music going. So now we do that. It'll be October and I'll play Christmas music. My wife's like, "Are we doing this again already?" I like Christmas too a lot, so I'm the same. I could go wander around the mall and look at lights and watch football. Always try to watch the game, on Thanksgiving and Christmas. So that's what we used to always do. So we do the same still. It's just we're a little bit smaller group now.
So one thing that people talk about about holidays and anniversaries and birthdays, and you don't always notice yourself going into the funk. You're just suddenly in the middle of it, didn't even realize you were wading in. So, how does the approach of the holidays affect you? So I tend to sort of dissociate and get really flaky and forgetful. And in the beginning, it was probably a bad idea for me to drive because it didn't go that well. But I seem to be able to drive my car fine now. But I just am sort of not in my body starting the middle of October until the middle of February. And people have to point that out to me. You're not really here with us, are you? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Mhm. You want me
So,
to?
yeah.
Yeah, I guess now that you say that, I noticed that, you know, I think I think more so even after losing my dad, I think now I still have my childhood trauma that will creep up on me, and I don't really like I don't notice it until, like you said, you're kind of in it. And I have noticed lately, like maybe I should call Barbara, but not terrible, but I just notice little things, right, that are uncomfortable, and you're like, oh, that's still there, huh? You know. Um, but I definitely deal with that I would say around the holidays. But I think more, yes, it's absolutely depressing not having my dad around. But I think that's mixed with childhood trauma, you know, and I think that makes it worse.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I always tell people it's hard enough for a grown-up to grieve, but if one of your kid parts wakes up and takes over, and
Yep.
now you got a 10-year-old in charge of your grief, it's all bad.
Yeah. Like sometimes I'll get home from work, I'm tired, and I'm whatever. Maybe not even angry, but I'm tired. I'm just beat, and I'll just be sitting there, kind of staring off. My wife's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah. I mean, I think so, But I find myself just kind of in that sometimes. Like it's not a fun place to be, right?
Yep.
So
So how about you, Anthony? Dissociation, not in your body, flakiness, any of that going on in your grieving world?
I check out quite often. Yeah, I mean, I'll stare off. My wife, she catches it quite a bit, and I'll I actually just get to the point where I suddenly hear her, hey, hey, and she'll say, I called your name 4 times, so it really does. I do check out. I get lost in a thought, and I go there and I shut off. I think sometimes I mean, subconsciously, but I think sometimes it might even be consciously, if that makes any bit of sense, where I don't want to feel it. I don't want to think about it. Mike talks about it, and there's my dad lost his twin brother when I was very young, and the Christmas his brother passed in May, and the Christmas of that year was terrible. It was terrible, and we every year we'd have the greatest Christmas Eve party because it was my parents' anniversary, so the party was always at our house, and that year there was no party as expected, but it was a Christmas that made me never want to celebrate another Christmas again in my life. My mom, God rest her soul, she kept that wonderfully alive, because her love for Christmas was so unbelievable. But that Christmas, I was 9 years old, and it's come up, too many times in my life. And I do believe that it has come up the last 2 years, because he's gone now, and she's gone. And she was Christmas to me, my mother. she embodied it, with her decorations and everything else. So yes, um, I tend to check out quite a bit. I have moments where I think a little bit too hard and I can burst into tears, and I get the lump in my throat, and I try to fight it back. Um, and sometimes that protection just comes on to disassociate, get away from it. So, and then there's times where I can work through it. Um, I guess it just goes, one way or the other, but it does come up quite a bit.
Yeah. I wonder if that ever goes away. So
Hopefully.
always at the end of my videos, I ask people for their 1 minute wisdom, the one thing that you want people to take out of this with you. If they ignore everything else we say, what do you really want them to walk away with? And for me, it's that um, I've learned to plan for the holidays. For years after my husband died, like, okay, I'll be better this year, I'll be fine this year. And now I'm just plan on being not fine. And then I'm more fine than I was because I planned it. So I support myself better. I pay more attention. I ask people to let me know if I'm flaking and not in the room, because usually I can come back in if someone says, "Are you actually here with us?" Oh, sorry, I'm back. So I talk about it a little bit more, and I do more specific things to support myself and plan things around those times, and just don't say, "I'll be fine," because that never works.
Mhm.
And so, how about you, Mike? What is your 1 minute of wisdom for grieving people?
I would say I've been through some really, really terrible things as a child, and then losing my dad in a really horrible way, that going through all those things, that you can get better, right? You have to put in the work and the time, but it does get better, um, if you're willing to work at it. You can find some type of normal.
Thank you. Okay,
Right.
Anthony.
Um, well, I think, for me, it's routine. Uh, it's connecting with, a small group of people. My children, my grandchildren make me incredibly happy. Um, and I see the beauty and the natural way of Christmas in their eyes, as in all children, I see the excitement and the pure magic of Christmas. So I can really go to concentrating on them. When I have those moments, I do try to stay in a routine and make the very best of, a heavy situation that, the holidays can be. Knowing that, I don't have to be okay. Um, that it is normal to feel what I'm feeling. I don't feel the pressure to have to carry Christmas, you
Yeah,
know. That's a big one, I'm allowed to feel it. I'm going to feel it. Try to normalize it that I'm not, you know, that I'm not wrong in the way I feel. And if I had to say anything to if I to say something to somebody is go easy on yourself. What you're feeling is righteous, and you get to feel this. There's a reason why you feel that that pain, and look for anything, any kind of connection that can allow you to remember the holidays, the fond moments that, as painful as they are today, it's because they were such a beautiful thing to you then, you know, and maybe try to put yourself back when it was really so special, you know, and I think that's why it hurts so damn much at times, because it was so beautiful and the memories were so great. And not always, but you know, for the most part, you know, it's just not as fun without them. So
Thank you so much for taking your time out of this busy holiday season to spend some time with me on this. And I really, really appreciate it. And I will hopefully see you both again at some point. And I'm going to turn off the recording.